Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. It is another college football preview edition of the show, season preview. And in this video, we're going to take a look at the Sun Belt Conference, and we're also going to tack on the independents, the three FBS independent teams as well in this video. And of course, those three teams are Notre Dame, UConn, and UMass. We'll also talk about those three teams following the Sun Belt Conference. And when you look at the Sun Belt Conference, it's right there maybe now with the AAC as one of the top group of five conferences in college football. It has become that strong. And it has really become the conference where a lot of the players that aren't quite good enough to get to an SEC team or stick with an SEC team, a lot of those players end up playing for a Sun Belt team. And that is what has made this a conference, I think, just as far as overall talent, it's gotten better over the years, and this year should be no exception. It's a very competitive conference as well. There's a lot of teams that could find themselves vying for supremacy in the Sun Belt this year. So it's a very, very fascinating conference to talk about. And like I said, as far as a group of five conferences, this is conference can stake its claim to being the best group of five conference right now with any of them. You know, right now, I think it's a three-horse race between the Sun Belt, the AAC, and the Mountain West as far as which conference I would view as the best out of the group of five. And then there's definitely a drop-off to the MAC and Conference USA after that. But there's a lot of good football in this conference, especially the last few years. And we've seen some Sun Belt teams pull some big upsets in non-conference play the last few years as well. So this continues to be a conference that's getting better. So let's get into it. We'll begin, of course, and we start always with every preview video, we go in alphabetical order. We'll begin with the Appalachian State Mountaineers. No question about it. This is a very good football team. It's a team that's got every capability to win the Sun Belt this year. Joey Aguilar back at quarterback, a very, very good junior season for him last season. Got the experience. He showed the kind of talent he has. Got a good arm. Isn't a slouch in the pocket either. He can move around. Very impressed with him last year. Kanye Roberts likely to take over this year as the lead running back for the App State Mountaineers. It looks like they've got Caden Robinson returning as far as receiving yards go. This was a very good offensive team last year. Fringe top 25, just outside the top 25 they were as far as points per game. They do only have two starting offensive linemen back, but looks like they've still done a pretty decent job filling the holes of the departed along that O-line. So I still think they're going to have a pretty solid group there. And you got to like what you see for the defense. There's a lot of experience returning. 8 returning starters. Defense wasn't nearly as good as the offense last year. They gave up 27.2 points per game, middle of the pack as far as college football on the defensive side of the football. And their top 2 tacklers are gone this year. So there are some concerns with that, but they do have their top pass rusher, Nate Johnson, who led the team in sacks last season. He's back, as well as Caden Sullivan, who was their leading one of their leading tacklers last year. So there's still some good experience here on that defensive side of the football, and still a lot to like here when it comes to App State talent-wise. I'll be honest with you, though, as far as their head coach, I'm not the biggest fan of him. I think at times he's left a little to be desired as far as adjustments with Sean Clark, but 5th season here. And overall, this has been a pretty good program under his watch. But I do think, as far as coaches go, there's better ones in this conference. That being said, he's got the roster. He's got the talent. There's no question about that. It's been a place where they've been able to recruit. Boone, North Carolina is a very nice place. They've got good facilities there at App State. You can understand why this team is right there as far as potential to win the Sun Belt. As far as their win total goes, I think they're just too talented to bet their win total under. I'm not rushing to bet it over with where it is currently. And as of right now, we see that the win total for App State is around that 8.5 mark. But they should be a very good team. Their offense should be extremely lethal. The defense is going to be interesting. I know they lose a couple of their better tacklers, but still should be very good. Their non-conference play, they do have a couple tough ones on the road. Clemson, East Carolina, but they do start with East Tennessee State, which should be a win. And you look at their conference schedule, Louisiana, Georgia State, Old Dominion, at Coastal, at Georgia Southern. There are a lot of winnable games in conference play you'd have to look at it. Their toughest conference games are probably going to be at Coastal Carolina, home to James Madison. And I should point out, too, they do play Liberty in non-conference play, so that won't be easy either. But they're a very good football team, and I think the win total's in a good spot. They could easily win this conference, but you're talking about betting the App State Mountaineers to win the conference when they're the favorite right now, sitting at plus 300. You can bet them if you want, but I'm looking for a little more value in this conference. And quite honestly, I think there's a team below them that's got a chance to maybe beat them out and upset them to win the Sun Belt, and we'll get to that in a moment. Arkansas State Red Wolves. This is a team, of course, this year. This has been a team that, for the last several years, it's been tough sledding for Arkansas State. They're going to be looking to get things cranked up now. The fourth season for Butch Jones. It's a team that's definitely had their share of struggles, looking to get things turned around a little bit after what we saw last year. The good news is last year, Arkansas State, kind of tough first half of the year, struggled a lot, especially on offense. But then they made the quarterback change to Jalen Rayner, and that's when things started to take a turn for the better for Arkansas State. He was very good once he became quarterback. They have Jaquez Cross and Zach Wallace returning at running back. Both of their top two productive receivers as far as returning production. Corey Rucker, Courtney Jackson are back. 4 starting O-linemen back. An offense that once Jalen Rayner took over at quarterback, the offense just took off and was so much better, more explosive, more touchdowns, finished drives. They should have a really good offense, this Arkansas State team. The question is going to be the defensive side of the football. That's where their problems were. 32 points per game allowed, 107th in the country. 4 starters are back. The good news is 2 of their top players on the defense are back. 2 of their leading tacklers. So that's definitely a positive. And when you look at it, they kept their top 2 players. Yes, they replaced a lot of other starters on that defense, but it was a pretty shit defense last year. So I actually think the arrow could point up on the defense, and there's no question about it. With pretty much all the offense back, majority of their starters back, including the quarterback, and now he'll get a full year under his belt. I like the prospects for this team this year. They're 16-1 to win the conference. I think as a longer shot, dark horse team to win this conference, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, to take a small shot with them. I do think they're going to be very potent on offense. Now, the one thing I will say too about Arkansas State is they open with Central Arkansas and Tulsa, winnable games. They could easily start 2-0. Obviously, they have at Michigan, at Iowa State, 2 very tough non-conference games. They get into a conference play. They do have to play at Texas State. But other than that, they could win at Southern Miss. Troy is down this year, which we'll get to. Louisiana, Ragin' Cajuns, winnable. At Georgia State, winnable. And then home against UL Monroe and Old Dominion, they probably could and should win those games, Arkansas State. So when you dissect the schedule, I definitely think when you look and you look at the win total for the Red Wolves heading into this season, I definitely think there's enough wins on that schedule to go over the win total, which is sitting at 6.5 right now. You could also opt to lay a big number with the 5.5, or you could shop around. Some books have a flat 6 with the win total, so that if they do finish 6-6, you'll push, worst case scenario. But either way, Arkansas State over, and I think that maybe a small little longer shot dark horse attempt here as a Sun Belt future at 16-1. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world either. All right, Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers, of course, this year they say goodbye to Grayson McCall, who's now at NC State, and Ethan Vasco, who is a guy that got some playing time down the stretch last year. He is going to be the number 1 quarterback, it looks like, for this football team. Definitely got some reps, and he actually had decent numbers. He definitely took care of the football, which is nice. Only 1 interception, 7 touchdowns last season. Braden Bennett is going to return and be the starting running back here for this team. 3 starting O-linemen back, so a lot of good returning production there. It looks like Jamison Tucker, their top receiver, also back for Coastal Carolina this year, which is some good news. So the weapons are there. Vasco, we'll see if he can build on a decent run last year down the stretch when he kind of took over the reins at quarterback for Coastal Carolina. But definitely, I think the offense is in some potentially solid shape for Coastal coming into this season. And, of course, Tim Beck now in year 2 after being in his first year last year after Jamie Chadwell went to Liberty. So a little more continuity with Beck now in his second season at the helm of this Coastal Carolina team as the head coach. If you look at the defensive side of the ball, 7 starters are back, but there is some concern as far as top 3 tacklers gone from last year. So that's going to be something to watch for. Obviously, there's still concerns about can Vasco fill the shoes of McCall, and that's not an easy thing to do. You could argue Grayson McCall, the most successful quarterback, decorated quarterback in Coastal history. And now you got to replace him. That's not easy. They do have depth concerns at receiver. Who's going to step up? Even though they do have some back on defense, when you lose your top 3 players, that's not going to be easy to have to replace that. As far as the non-conference on their schedule, that's a big game for them next Thursday night at Jacksonville State, one of the top teams in Conference USA. Very good first game of the season to see where both of those teams are at. Coastal's taken a lot of money in that game. I sure wouldn't bet him now. In fact, I think there's now value on Jacksonville State. The Gamecocks laying less than a field goal in that game at home next Thursday night. They host William and Mary after that. Bill and his bitch. They can win that. At Temple, they should win. Even Virginia at home. I mean, Virginia's got issues. I wouldn't count them out there, but then you'll see some tougher games down the stretch. They will get App State. They will get some tougher games, but the schedule is not the worst thing in the world. Their win total here is sitting at 6.5. When I look at the schedule right now for Coastal Carolina, I see 6 wins, probably. I don't know about 7. It's going to be close. I would lean slightly to the under, but again, this is not something that I am betting at the moment. It's under 6.5, minus 140. It just might be asking a lot to expect Coastal Carolina, to be a team that can replace, like Grayson McCall doesn't type of quarterback doesn't come around every day for a program like Coastal Carolina, especially when you factor in that I don't believe Tim Beck is recruiting nearly as well as Jamie Chadwell did. So I'm going to lean slightly to the under with Coastal Carolina this season. They actually might be, when I look at this team, their offense may be a little more pedestrian. I was thinking they were going to play a little faster on offense. They really didn't last year, so they might be an under team as far as game totals as well. All right, Georgia Southern Eagles. When you look at this Georgia Southern team coming into the 2024 season, obviously the head coach there, it remains Clay Helton in his 3rd season, of course, former USC head coach. It looks like Dexter Williams II has transferred in and going to be, we thought he might win the job, but it looks like J.C. French has landed the job. Yes, I just wanted to confirm that just a few days ago. He beat out Dexter Williams, who transferred in from Indiana. So it'll be interesting. He is a dual threat quarterback. They do like his ability to move in the pocket. J.C. French, what kind of good pocket passer he is, remains to be seen. Jalen White, the lead running back. They do have Derwin Burgess and Dallin Cobb back in the receiving core, and they both were pretty good there. 3 starting offensive linemen back, so that should be a good thing as well for Georgia State coming into the season. So going to be interesting to see how it goes. Worth noting, they do have a new offensive coordinator this year. It's a guy that was actually a quarterback in this conference many years ago for Arkansas State, and I'm talking about Ryan Applin. He takes over as the offensive coordinator here for Georgia State. Going to be interesting to see what kind of imprint he makes on this offense going into this season. They've tried to play fast throughout the course of the past few years. Are they maybe going to look to slow things down just a little bit? That's going to be interesting to see if that ends up being the case. I haven't read anything definitive about the kind of scheme and tempo that they're going to run on offense. But for a team that's run, up-tempo offense, is this going to mean a change of some kind? We'll have to wait and see on that. As far as the defensive side of the football, 7 starters are back. Defense was the problem last year, 33 points per game. It's concerning to me that I thought for sure Dexter Williams had the skill set, the ability, and the experience to win the job, and the fact he didn't kind of concerns me. They must really like J.C. French. We'll have to wait and see. The offense was obviously solid last year. We'll have to see about the defense, though, if it can turn things around. The schedule, they start with Boise State, very tough game, but they have Nevada, South Carolina State. Both of those are winnable. At Ole Miss, won't win that. At Georgia State, it's kind of winnable. Marshall, I don't know if they'll win that. They probably won't beat James Madison. At Old Dominion, at South Alabama versus Troy, at Coastal Carolina, at App State. it's not the worst schedule in the world. It isn't. For this Georgia Southern team coming into the year. Win total sitting at 5.5. I'm a little bit more negative to the other Georgia team we're going to get to in a second, Georgia State. I haven't bet it. Slight lean over. Could they get to bowl eligibility? We'll see. But still, I'm going to have to see it from Clay Helton. You know how I feel about him. I know he's done that first year at Georgia Southern kind of exceeded expectations, but only 3-5 in conference play, 6-7 last year. They did win 6 last year. So for that reason, I'll lean over that 5.5 when it comes to Georgia Southern. All right, Georgia State, the Georgia State Panthers of 2024. This is a team that's had a lot of turmoil in the offseason. It's going to be interesting to see how this one goes. Of course, they make a coaching change. First-year head coach, first-year OC, first-year DC, and Del McGee taking over as the head coach here for Georgia State. So a lot of change. It's going to be interesting to see if they can how quickly they can assimilate with all these changes. Zach Gibson, Georgia Tech transfer, comes in at quarterback. He was battling with the Pitt transfer, Christian Vea, throughout fall and summer camp. But Vea, I think, has lost the job. I believe they're going to give it to Gibson, at least it looks like right now. So it looks like he won the starting quarterback battle in fall camp. C.J. Beasley, a transfer from Coastal, is going to be the starting running back. They lose their best receiver from last year. But the one concern for Georgia State, for an offense that last year was not bad, is that they only have one starting offensive lineman back. That is definitely going to be something that concerns me. And that offense overall, Zach Gibson never in his playing time at Georgia Tech looked like a very strong, capable quarterback. He had more interceptions than touchdowns in his time at Georgia Tech. That's definitely not something you want to see. And the fact he won the job is kind of is kind of just stunning a little bit, considering just how he didn't really light it up at Georgia Tech at any point. The defense last year, it wasn't great. They gave up 9.7 points per game. They do have 7 starters back, but that defense, man, they're going to have to really be good if they're going to make inroads. And the problem is they've got one of the tougher Sun Belt schedules this year. I like under 4.5 wins with Georgia State. You got to lay -160, but first-year head coach, first-year DC, first-year OC, 2 starters back on offense. The defense could be better with 7 back, including their top tackler. But boy, when you're a bad defense, and what if the offense sputters, and it's going to be too much on that plate for that defense, especially when you factor in the schedule. You got to play Georgia Tech in the non-conference. You got to play Vanderbilt in the non-conference. You're going to have a road game at App State. You're going to have to play UConn in non-conference on the road. That's no picnic. At James Madison, who's not going to fall off, in my opinion, as much as some people think. Arkansas State, an improved team in the conference, which we talked about. At Texas State, who could be one of the top teams in the conference this year, and home against Coastal. There's not a lot of wins that jump off the page at me for Georgia State. So under the total for me when it comes to Georgia State, and they are going to be a bet against team for me, probably early and often, week to week this season. All right, the James Madison Dukes. So a lot of people think Curt Cignetti gone, took a lot of his players with him to Indiana. What does that mean for James Madison this season, that they're going to be a massive drop-off coming into the year? First of all, I like the hire of Bob Chesney. Bob Chesney is a guy that was the head coach at Holy Cross in the FCS ranks the last several years. And for those that aren't aware, Holy Cross has been one of the better FCS teams the last few years. They've always been in the FCS playoffs. They've gotten into the postseason multiple times. Bob Chesney did a really good job with that program, and I think it was a solid hire. And the only question is can his coaching acumen and his ability to get the job done transfer from the FCS level to the FBS level here with his new team, James Madison. But I like the hire. A guy that's had success at Division II or Division III. How many times have we seen that carry over? And it actually does translate to the FBS. Lance Leipold, anybody? Remember him? How about Kalen DeBoer? This is a guy that coached some D2, D3 football before. And look at him. He's one of the best coaches in college football. Lance Leipold coached D2, D3 football. Look at what he's done at Kansas right now. So there's evidence of these guys being able to go from D2 or D3 to FBS, D1 football and have success. And it wouldn't shock me to see that for Bob Chesney. Will it be in year 1? That ends up being the biggest question, because you are still talking about big roster turnover from last year. Good news is they do bring back experience at the quarterback spot in Dylan Morris, who transfers over from Washington, he's going to get the start here for the James Madison Dukes. They have a new running back this year, transfer from North Texas. As far as their receivers, all three starting wide receivers and the starting tight end are gone, but still some talent there with Taji Hudson, Cameron Ross. The UConn transfer was a nice get as well. So that should help. 3 starting offensive linemen, pretty good that James Madison has that, considering Cignetti leaving and him taking a lot of the players with him to Indiana, that they still have 3 starting O-linemen back, which is a good thing for James Madison. The defensive side of the football, which was very good for this team under Cignetti, especially last year. They were a top 25 scoring defense last year in college football, 20.8 points per game allowed, but only 3 starters back. They did lose a lot from that group. The question is, how quickly can Bob Chesney mold this defense into being pretty good? One thing I will say about Bob Chesney too, he's not only a very good coach at the last team he was with, Holy Cross, but this team, after they were a horrible team before he got there, and he ended up having an overall record of almost 25 games above 500. Dylan Morris has some talent. He's finally going to get a clear opportunity, and the running back they got from North Texas is capable of having a big season. Certainly the defense, there's going to be some growing pains. I think their offense actually could put up points. I think they could be a good over team. Defense is going to be the part of the team, the side of the football that maybe is lagging behind, especially early in the year. But I think there's capability for the offense, maybe even immediately, to be better than people think. And their schedule allows them to get off to a decent start at Charlotte. They can still win that game. Charlotte's got a ton of talent issues and depth issues. Gardner-Webb at home can be a win. At North Carolina will be tough. North Carolina does have some questions, though, for me. Ball State at home can be a win. They should beat UL Monroe. They have Coastal at home, which helps them. At Georgia Southern's a winnable game. Southern Miss a winnable game. Georgia State a winnable game. Old Dominion's a game I still think they should win. They do finish with tough games against Marshall and App State, but when you look at James Madison, it's a team that's been a good team for the last couple of years. Last year, this team was phenomenal, and I know they lose a decent chunk from that team, but we're still talking about a team now being asked to win 9 games or more. I still think this potential. Now, I would have liked this more at 8, and I know there were some 8s out there, and maybe there still are moving forward. But 11 wins last year overall, 7-1 in Sun Belt play. I really like this higher. I don't think the talent drop-off is going to be as immense as people think. I think they could end up being 8-4, but 9-3 is actually, to me, well within reach for James Madison. So 8.5 and the over being a plus price, I will still lean over 8.5 with James Madison. And I think people are going to sour on this team because, Cignetti's gone, took all his players with him. I'm not so sure about that. This is still a conference where they could be an upper half of the conference finish. You'll probably get them devalued against the point spread week to week because of everything that all the personnel changes from last year. And I think you actually could get some value this year to back James Madison. All right, the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns next up. It looks like Chandler Fields is going to end up being the quarterback this year for the Cajuns. And, of course, he's a guy that certainly got his share of playing time. Ben Wooldridge played a little bit last year. They had a bunch of quarterbacks getting the playing time for the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns last season, but it definitely does look like it is going to be Chandler Fields this year. I think the hot seat is starting to crank up for Michael DeSormo in his 3rd season as the head coach. I think he's kind of got to make it happen this year for the Ragin' Cajuns. 6-7 last year, 6-7 the year before. This program is used to being a contender in this conference, and we're not exactly seeing that right now. Draylon Washington is going to be the starting running back. They do have Jacob Bernard, their top receiver back, 3 starters on the O-line back, 8 starters back on defense, but a defense that wasn't great last year, almost 30 points per game allowed. You look at the schedule too, Texas State, an improved Arkansas State on the schedule, Coastal, App State, Wake Forest in non-conference play, Tulane in non-conference play. Some tough games on that schedule. The win total right now for Louisiana is sitting at around 7.5. I'm not ready to get there with 8 wins. I'm not ready to get there with a thought process that has this team winning 8 games. Schedule is pretty challenging. I haven't loved the trajectory of the program under this coach. Defense still has major question marks. Let's see what the offense can do with a full year of Chandler Fields at the helm. But they didn't really enhance the offense a lot. It's almost like they're bringing back the same kind of up and down, inconsistent, mundane group that they had last year. And the fact that their defense actually probably will be better because of the 8 starters back. They face a lot of the really good offenses on their schedule, and that probably is going to keep them from being more than a 7-win team. So I would go under with the Cajuns here as far as their win total. UL Monroe Warhawks. I mean, could we open the door potentially here for some kind of improvement from this team? I mean, my goodness, it's been obviously tough sledding for UL Monroe. They're coming off a 2-10 team season last year. Didn't win a single Sun Belt Conference game. They part ways with Terry Bowden. Bryant Vincent, who was the UAB interim coach after Bill Clark retired, he takes over as the head coach here at ULM. I'll be honest, he did a nice little job there at UAB a few years ago, and I thought they gave him a raw deal. I think he got shafted. They don't bring him back. The kids were outspoken. We want Bryant Vincent as our coach, and they go out and they bring in Trent Dilfer instead, which is a bad hire in my opinion. I don't like it. I didn't get that. I thought he got shafted. I thought he got a raw deal. They didn't listen to the kids who wanted Bryant Vincent to be the head coach there at UAB. Now, Bryant Vincent comes over from New Mexico, where he was the offensive coordinator. The one thing I'll say about Bryant Vincent, although I like the job, I like the job that he did at UAB when Bill Clark stepped down. He didn't do a very good job with the OC as OC last year. That offense was miserable. It was awful for New Mexico. So he's going to have to hope he generates a little bit more offensively with this group. Top 2 quarterbacks from last season are gone for them. Jaya Wright, and there was someone else that ended up getting starts for them. They're both gone. It looks like there was a battle in camp, but it looks like General Booty, one of my favorite names in college football, Oklahoma transfer, he's in line, it looks like, to start. It was a battle between him and Hunter Herring to be the starting quarterback, but General Booty is going to be the guy for ULM to be the starting quarterback here for them this season. They only have 1 wide receiver from last year that caught any passes. That's a concern. 1 starting offensive lineman back. That's a concern. Only 4 starters back on a wretched defense that gave up almost a 37-point-per-game allowance, which is just abysmal. And then you look at the schedule, right? Texas in non-conference play. At Troy, James Madison, Texas State, Auburn in non-conference play. Improved Arkansas State team. And they're going to be pretty much an underdog in the majority of their games this season. I know the win total is only 2.5, but is there 3 wins on this schedule for this team? I'm not so sure about that. No, I'm not going under 2.5, and I'm not laying -180 on an under 2.5. No chance. But I'm not so sure this is going to be more than a 2-win team this year with that schedule, with the defense being awful, with question marks galore on offense, and nobody back. The O-line's, completely rebuilt. There's a reason why UL Monroe's 2.5 with their win total. All right, the Marshall Thundering Herd here next up as the Sun Belt preview rolls along. I think when you look at the Marshall Thundering Herd this season, they've got Charles Huff back, 4th season at the helm. Here's another situation where, it was a good couple of years there for Charles Huff. Well, not bad in the first 2 years, but definitely a decline last year. And just from the Doc Holliday era, the guy that was here a long time at Marshall, some questions about, is Charles Huff maintaining the standard here at Marshall that Doc Holliday set? And right now, I think the answer is starting to look like no. They've actually declined a little bit. Of course, Cam Fancher transfers out. He was their quarterback last year. People thought the son of Chad Pennington, Cole Pennington, was going to be the guy to win the quarterback job this season. But as of right now, I've not seen them announce a starter, but apparently there's been 3 quarterbacks battling. Braylon Braxton, who transferred to the Marshall Thundering Herd following 3 years at Tulsa, and Stone Earl was also battling for the job. He was at North Texas last year. And then, of course, Cole Pennington, who is a guy that was with Marshall last year, got some playing time late in the season, including, I believe, he started the bowl game as well. but no definitive starter. And sometimes when you don't know this close to the start of the year who your starter is going to be, it sometimes speaks volumes that no one's really stood out. So that definitely does concern me. And the one thing about Pennington last year, 6 interceptions, not a single touchdown pass. That's definitely not what you want to see. Jordan Houston, the NC State transfer, is going to be their new starting running back, it looks like, this year for this Marshall team. Just looking as though I lost my spot. Yeah, he is going to be the starting running back. Top 3 receivers are gone, but they do get a couple of transfers in. Braylon Brown from Ole Miss, Christian Fitzpatrick from Michigan State, Tyshawn Chapman from North Carolina. So they actually did okay in the transfer portal to plug the holes. But one starting offensive lineman, much like we talked about with Monroe a moment ago, that's definitely not what you want to see. Defense took a step back last year, but 6 starters are back. They get a tremendous safety. J.J. Roberts back. D-line's actually not bad. I think when you look at it, though, Charles Huff did a decent job in the transfer portal. But the thing that's holding me back here on Marshall is the quarterback situation. It bothers me that 3 guys have been battling and no one's really stood out and looked like a clear-cut number 1 quarterback. The good news for Marshall is, and it's why I was kind of leaning initially to the over with the win total for Marshall being at 5.5. They only need to get to bowl eligibility and 6 wins to go over their win total. The schedule has done them a solid. It's a manageable schedule. They can beat Stony Brook in the first week. Yes, they play Virginia Tech and Ohio State. Those will be losses. But Western Michigan at home is a winnable game. App State won't be easy. But then they have Georgia Southern, Georgia State, Monroe, Southern Miss, Coastal, Old Dominion. All of those are winnable for Marshall if they play well. At James Madison will be tough, but everything else is winnable. So they could find their way to 6. Lean over 5.5. I'm worried, though, about how much of a struggle it's been for Huff to find and decide on a number 1 quarterback. That kind of read the tea leaves. That kind of tells me that no one stood out here in fall camp. All right, Old Dominion. Next up, this is a program that's been in a bit of a steady decline downward here for the in recent years. Looks like we're going to see Grant Wilson at quarterback for Old Dominion. Ricky Ronnie in his 5th season. Did a nice job initially, but you can kind of see this program starting to slide ever so slowly back downward. Grant Wilson back at quarterback. Solid numbers last year. 17 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, but they lose both running backs from last year. Top receiver gone. 2 starters on the O-line back. Only 4 starters back on the defense as well this year. A defense that was a little below average, 28.7 points per game. I don't think they're markedly better, and I don't think they're markedly worse, Old Dominion, than they were last year. A team that in 2023 ended up going 6-7. And their win total this year is 4.5. So you think 6-7 last year. Can't they win 5 games at least and go over? The markets have adjusted to it. And why have they adjusted? Schedule is brutal. At South Carolina, home to East Carolina, home to Virginia Tech. That's 0-3 probably right there for Old Dominion. At Bowling Green, an improved MAC team on the road. Look out. At Coastal, no picnic. At Georgia State, they can win that, but again, it's on the road. Texas State, probably not winning that. Georgia Southern at home, they could win that. App State, nope, I don't see it. James Madison, nope. Marshall at home, maybe. And Arkansas State improved this year, in my opinion, and they get that game on the road. So where are the 5 wins? Where are the slam dunk, surefire 5 wins? I'm not sure they're there for Old Dominion. So would lean under with their win total at minus 150 in this price range. All right, South Alabama Jaguars next up here as far as the Sun Belt. Major Applewhite coming in as the new head coach here for the South Alabama Jaguars. Of course, this is a program that, here in the Sun Belt, it's been one of those programs where they've been pretty solid, pretty good the last few years. Maybe not one of the best teams in the conference. They actually did a couple of years ago, co-champion in the Sun Belt West, lost in the Sun Belt title game. Last year, a bit of a step back for the final year. Kane Womack, though, moves on. Major Applewhite takes over. Major Applewhite's a guy that, it's a lukewarm hire for me. It's not something that I'm excited about. I think they could have gone in a different direction, but it is what it is. He does have a lot of experience, especially on the offensive side of the football as a head coach. It's looking like the head quarterback is going to be Gio Lopez after they see the quarterback depart from last year. Gio Lopez is going to be back to start for this team. They're going to have a new running back. Their top wide receiver from last year has departed. What's concerning, too, for South Alabama is another team with very little returning, actually nothing returning on the offensive line for South Alabama. So it's definitely something that you'd be worried about here. 4 starters back on defense, a defense that was solid last year for South Alabama, but you lose Kane Womack and his defensive acumen. He's a great defensive-minded coach. He's gone, of course, as the head coach, so you're going to have to deal with that. You've got a new DC, new OC, Rob Ezell and Will Wyndham, the respective roles as OC and DC under Applewhite. That's not what you want to see. And then you look at the schedule that they've got. It's a very tough schedule. North Texas, Ohio. Actually, the non-conference isn't bad, but they do play LSU in non-conference play. But at Arkansas State, at App State, Texas State's on the schedule. Like, you've got pretty much all the heavyweights of the Sun Belt on this schedule, plus a couple of tough games in non-conference. I'm not sure this team is going to be able to get through to that 6.5 or be a 7-win team for sure. But I think they've adjusted to it. 6.5, minus 160 with the over. I'd lean to the under. I think there's still a potential for this to be a 6-7 win team. But again, there's a lot of turnover. I would still have to lean a little bit under the total here with South Alabama. I definitely have to consider it a coaching downgrade, going to Major Applewhite from a guy that's done, a really good job in his career in Kane Womack. All right, Southern Miss Golden Eagles. Next up here. One thing, too, I want to point out, one last thing about South Alabama and the departure of Kane Womack. It's kind of interesting that Kane Womack didn't leave South Alabama to be a head coach elsewhere. He left to be the DC at Alabama for Kalen DeBoer. Normally, that to me sends some red flags up big time, that he would not be a guy to stick around and look for another coach. It kind of tells me he just wanted out at South Alabama. Maybe there's something that he didn't like, or sees something that he doesn't like about the direction of the program. But, that would definitely concern me a little bit about South Alabama as well. Southern Miss Golden Eagles, 4th season under Will Hall. I liked the hire of Will Hall. He's had so many problems injuries galore at the quarterback spot have really hampered this team. The first year was tough. It looked like he was building something, though, because they get to a bowl game the year before, and that was a huge step backward last year, going 3-9 overall. But a lot of quarterback problems, quarterback injuries once again. Can they overcome that this year? They do bring in a guy with some talent, from Florida State, transferring over, Tate Rodemaker. He's going to win the quarterback job here with the Golden Eagles. Rodriguez Clark becomes the new starting running back. It looks like top 2 receivers gone, only like 1 starting offensive lineman back. Rodemaker's got talent, but boy, very thin at receiver. O-line is completely starting over. That definitely does concern me. Now, the defense was abysmal, 37.7 points per game last year, near the bottom of college football in scoring defense. 7 starters back, their leading tackler, but, it was a pretty wretched defense this season. But look, I think the thing you have to keep in mind is, the offense can't be much worse. It's not like the O-line was great last year. The O-line was, even though they have 1 returning starter, think about it. The offensive line, they got their quarterbacks killed last year. So is it really going to be that much worse? And Rodemaker's got some great talent. It's actually a very nice pickup for a program like Southern Miss to get someone as recruited with the capability of a Tate Rodemaker. It does help them. You look at the defense, 7 starters back, and the schedule. There's worse schedules here in the conference than what Southern Miss has. Yeah, they play at Kentucky, South Florida, at Jacksonville State won't be easy. At James Madison, Texas State, but they also play South Alabama, Troy, Marshall, UL Monroe, Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns. There are some winnable games on this schedule, and all they need to do is win 4 or 5. Shop around for over 4 if you can find it. If I were to bet the over, I'd want the 4 in case they finish 4-8, because I think that's a possibility. It's not a guarantee to me this is a 5-win team, but I would lean over before under with Southern Miss. I'm willing to give Will Hall the benefit of the doubt. And you just got to hope this team stays a little bit more healthier than they have in the past. All right, Texas State Bobcats next up here. Lots to like here. G.J. Kinney is looking like a young coach on the rise here in the ranks of the Texas State Bobcats. 2nd season, great first season, 8-5 overall. And he's got a team that for a group of 5 talent, it's really strong. There's no denying that whatsoever for Texas State this year. You think, wow, they lose TJ Finley. What are you going to do? He was a pretty good quarterback, right? Well, they're fine. They bring in James Madison, transfer Jordan McLeod, who was tremendous last year. He's one of the better group of 5 quarterbacks last season. Tons of experience. Started his career at South Florida. What a great get for G.J. Kinney to get Jordan McLeod as the new quarterback here at Texas State. They shouldn't skip a beat in terms of quarterback production with him. Ismail Mahdi is going to be the running back here for Texas State. He's really good. He had over 1,300 yards last year. They do lose a couple receivers, but they went to the portal. They brought in some good talent, and they still have 2 pretty good receivers also returning from last year, and Hobart and Wilson. 3 starting offensive linemen back. Offense was great last year, 20th in the country in scoring. The defense was the weak link, unfortunately. They were only 32.8 points per game. They do have 6 starters back. I think, though, talent-wise, they're good. I think the defense is better. There's no question this year, and their offense is loaded. Their offense should have no problem moving the football. They are going to be a dynamic, explosive, quick strike offense, and they play with up-tempo pace as well. I like Texas State. I like them over 8.5 wins, and not only that, I think they can win this conference. I think they can take down App State or anyone else. So I really like the future price on them around the plus 380 range for Texas State to win the Sun Belt. All right, the Troy Trojans next up. Look, you're replacing a hell of a coach, and I mean a hell of a coach. This, by the way, the last team for the Sun Belt. He just did a great job for this team. There's no doubt. John Sumrall. Now you bring in Gerard Parker as the new head coach. It's a guy that was the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame last year. The reviews were mixed as far as the performance he had at the OC position. But you're going to go with him, and you're going to have to hope for good things. But, new head coach in Parker, that's going to be something to watch for. Obviously, with it comes new OC and new DC as well. So new schemes, both sides of the ball. Starting quarterback gone. Goose Crowder is going to be the new starting quarterback, it looks like, for the Troy Trojans this year. We'll see how he fares. Starting running back gone. 2 starting offensive linemen back. Top receiver gone. And then on defense, a defense that Sumrall had as one of the really great defenses in not only the Sun Belt, all of the group of 5, 16.2 points per game allowed last year, while only 2 starters back. They're going to have upwards of half a dozen transfer additions starting on the defensive side of the football for Troy this year. That's not exactly something you want to see. So you have to look under, unfortunately. I mean, that's a great coach you're replacing. Not that Parker can't do the job, but I think there's going to be some growing pains this first particular season. And then the schedule doesn't do them many favors. Nevada, Memphis, Iowa. I mean, you're looking at maybe Nevada's definitely a game they could win with it being at home, but Memphis, Iowa, those won't be easy. You play Texas State, Arkansas State, South Alabama, Coastal in conference play. Not the easiest schedule either. Very tougher conference schedule as well. And like I said, new schemes, new starting quarterback, totally revamped defense. Could be tough sledding for Troy. I would lean under the total with them. All right, let's do the independent teams. There's 3 of them. We'll begin with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And obviously, there are some expectations this year with Notre Dame and what people think they could be capable of this season. We'll see if they're able to meet those expectations when it's all said and done. But you look at Notre Dame, it all starts with Riley Leonard, getting him in at the quarterback spot after Sam Hartman departs for the NFL. And Riley Leonard was a great quarterback at Duke. A big part of why Mike Elko turned Duke around was the quarterback play they got from Riley Leonard. Looking forward to seeing how he plays here at Notre Dame. Looks like Jeremiah Love is going to take over as the number 1 running back here for Marcus Freeman's Notre Dame Fighting Irish team this season, although Jadarian Price is still in the mix as well. As far as receivers go, they lose a couple, but Mitchell Evans at tight end is back. They did a decent job in the transfer portal. 2 starting offensive linemen returning, 6 starters on defense back. A defense that was a top 10 defense last year for Notre Dame, which is good to see. The problem is, and look, Notre Dame, there's a lot to like, and I love them getting Leonard, but we're asking them to win 11 games. I understand why the juice is minus 185 on under 10.5. I'm not ready to ask Notre Dame. And by the way, they suffered a key injury on the offensive line here in fall camp, and that is definitely concerning. One of their best O linemen, and that's not what you want to see going into the season. And a very tough first game at Texas A&M at College Station. At Purdue, Miami O. The rest of their schedule: Louisville, Stanford, Navy, at Georgia Tech. They're all winnable, but I don't think they're going to win at Texas A&M. Florida State at home, not sure they win that. And if they lose those two, there goes your over 10.5. So I would only look under 10.5 here with Notre Dame. I still think they're going to have a very good team, very good season. But boy, asking them to win 11 games to me is asking a little bit too much. All right, next up, we've got the UConn Huskies. Connecticut is a team that, slowly but surely, you're seeing this team, start to make some headway. This was a program that was in some pretty big shambles when Jim Mora Jr. took over, but now in his third season, starting to build a little something. Kind of took a step back last year, 3-9 after the 6-win season in his first year. See if they can take another step forward this year. Looks like Nick Evers is going to be the starting quarterback here for UConn this season, although Joseph Fagnano, who got some playing time last year, is still competing for that job. It looks like both starting running backs, Victor Rosa and Cam Edwards, are back. Victor Rosa was pretty good, so it's nice to see him back. Brett Buckman returning at receiver. They go to the transfer portal to kind of fill out the void. 2 starting O-linemen back, 5 starters on defense, a defense that definitely took a step back last year. I think it was because, the offense just wasn't consistent enough, didn't stay on the field enough. That's why they gave up so many points last year. As far as the win total here, under 4.5 is probably the lean here for me when it comes to UConn. Just because, the schedule, is not overly kind to them. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But at Maryland versus Merrimack is probably a win. But then at Duke versus Florida Atlantic, Buffalo could be a win, but Temple should be a win. But then you got Wake Forest, Rice is improved, Georgia State, UAB, Syracuse, UMass at the end of the season. Could come down to that for UConn's win total. We'll see how it goes. Upon further review, with UConn, they could slide over this number. Maybe I'm a little more optimistic than I should be, but the one thing about UConn is I think they've upgraded the defense this year. It's going to be what do they get from the Fagnano-Evers combination at quarterback, who can step up. There might be 5 wins on this schedule. The 4.5 is only minus 130 to the over. I think I actually will lean over. Not a strong opinion, but I think I will lean over this win total when it comes to the UConn Huskies. And finally, we wrap it up, this Sun Belt and Independence season preview video with the UMass Minutemen. The UMass program has been a bottom feeder now the last, several years now in college football. I mean, certainly people holding out hope that they can get better. Don Brown now in his 7th season as the head coach, 3-9 last year. It's hard to see light at the end of the tunnel for UMass. It looks like this year they bring back, as far as the starting quarterback for this team, Tyson Fomachan. Looks like he is going to be, once again, the starting quarterback here in 2024 for the Minutemen. 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, just too many. That's just not a great ratio. That's not what you want. Looks like Anthony Simpson returns. They did do a decent job getting through to the portal to try to plug some of the holes at wide receiver. They only have 2 starting offensive linemen back. It's an offense that was pedestrian last year, only averaging a little more than 22 points per game. Defense was awful. Only 132 out of 133 teams last year, giving up almost 40 points per game. 7 starters are back. But boy, their defense, they return a lot, but they were just absolutely abysmal. So you're returning a lot from a very bad defense and a schedule that does you no favors either. You're going to have a tough slate of it. For me, I could only look under with this team. I mean, 3 wins last year. I don't think it's a sure thing at all that they're going to improve on that. The win total this year being at 3.5, pretty much even money. Lean under. You don't have a lot of wiggle room, because they could find themselves to 3 wins, but finding a 4th win on this schedule with that defense and big-time concerns about the production at quarterback from Fomachan, and I think it's just I'm not ready to ask this team to be a 4-win team. So lean under by default. Lean under 3.5 with UMass. All right, best bet. There you go. That's the Sun Belt and the Independence season preview. Best bet for the Sun Belt. Let's do Texas State to win the Sun Belt. Give me Texas State to win the Sun Belt. I'm a G.J. Kinney believer. This is a guy that's not going to be here very long. This is a guy that's going to be coaching a major FBS program in the next few years. If he keeps up this trajectory, he's a good young coach on the rise, is a star coach on the rise. And I think this Texas State team's got it in them to be good enough. Their offense is going to be explosive, lethal. If the defense can be better, and I think it will, they are going to be a tough team to beat. They're very well coached, and I think they've got the goods to upset App State and some of the other better teams in the Sun Belt and win this conference. So Texas State to win the Sun Belt. Shop around. You can get that price for them to win the Sun Belt upwards of plus 380. I will go with that for my Sun Belt preview best bet. That's a wrap for the Sun Belt and Independence college football preview video right here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Hit the like button on the way out. I'm Ian Cameron. Thanks for watching the Sun Belt and Independence college football preview video right here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.